Hey guys, tonight we're heading way back to the dusty roar of ancient Rome, where the scent of blood, sweat, and olive oil mixed with the cheers of a crowd hungry for spectacle. But don't worry, you're not here to fight. Not tonight. No, tonight. You're retiring from a job that involved dodging tridents and maybe the occasional tiger. No pressure, right? You've just stepped off the arena floor, your chest still heaving, sand clinging to your legs like overly attached fans. The crowd just screamed your name, probably for the last time, and for a moment you stand there blinking into the sunlight, wondering if that really was your last match or just another round in Rome's longest-running meat grinder. You probably won't survive this story either. But hey, that's part of the charm. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is, just to make this a little cozier. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You drag your feet through the sand, the arena floor, somehow both familiar and foreign, now that you're not sure if you'll fight again. You still hear the clamor of the crowd echoing in your ears, but their roar is starting to fade. That's what they do, you realize. They roar, they cheer, they go home to dinner. You might be limping back to a bathhouse alone, clutching a bruised rib and a slightly dislocated ego. The lanista, your manager coach, and all-around gladiator wrangler, is watching from the gate. He's chewing on something you hope isn't pigeon and nods solemnly, like he's just seen you off to war. He knows what you know. There's no set age for a gladiator to retire. There's just the moment your body says, I'm done, and the moment your audience agrees. You get a pat on the back from a fellow fighter who once knocked out a bear with a frying pan. Long story. You exchange a look that says, we made it, somehow. Then again, he still has 3 fights left in his contract, and you can already feel the envy in his shoulder pat. What most people don't realize, aside from the fact that gladiators didn't always fight to the death, Hollywood, is that retirement was never a guaranteed outcome. You had to survive long enough, earn enough favor, and hope nobody demanded an encore. And even then, there were rules, whispers, and weird little rituals the Romans insisted on performing before letting you go live your best non-lethal life. As you walk through the tunnel beneath the Colosseum, the darkness feels oddly comforting. You pass the blood-stained walls where someone carved a tiny etching of a fish, maybe a good luck symbol, or maybe someone was just really hungry. You run your hand along the stone, still warm from the sun, or maybe just haunted. Your armor creaks as you move every step, reminding you of every blow you took. You were trained for years to ignore pain. Now you get to feel all of it without the adrenaline buffer. Hooray! Back in the holding rooms, you collapse onto a bench next to a discarded water jug and a helmet that still smells like goat. A boy runs in one of the arena slaves and hands you a scrap of papyrus. Your name is scrawled on it in thick ink with the Latin equivalent of awaiting decision. You don't say it out loud, but you think, again, retirement isn't just a moment. It's paperwork. It's waiting. It's hoping the editor of the game's the guy who bankrolls and schedules the show, puts a check mark next to your name instead of circling it with rematch in the margin. You doze off for a minute. In your dream, you're still fighting, but this time it's with spoons against 5 flamingos. Freud would have a field day with that one. A horn blows in the distance, low and echoing. Somewhere, another match is starting. You're not in it. That feels strange. Like you've left the stage but forgotten your lines backstage. Then a tall shadow enters the room. A man in a plum-colored toga. Fancy. That's a good sign. He smells like saffron and expensive sandals. He hands you something small, a wax seal stamped with an image of a laurel wreath. It means you're out, or as out as you can be. You're officially Mrs. Released, and yet you don't feel like celebrating. Your shoulder still hurts from that net trap in the second round, and you're pretty sure the guy with the mace chipped one of your teeth. You pick up your helmet and stare at it. The dents tell stories. Some funny, some terrifying one involving a goose that should definitely not have been in the arena. You place the helmet down gently. It's not yours anymore. Somewhere in the city, someone is throwing a party. They might be toasting your career, or they might have already moved on to the next crowd favorite. The crowd forgets. But you remember every strike, every roar, every silence before the verdict. You rise slow and stiff. You walk toward the door that leads not to the sand, but to the streets of Rome. The sunlight feels different on your face now. Less like a spotlight, more like a question mark. What now? You adjust your tunic, try to look like a respectable citizen, and fail instantly because you still have dried blood in your ear. A little girl on the street points at you and says, "Gladiator." You smile, nod, and then she asks, "Did you win?" You think about it, about all of it. Then you say yes, and keep walking. The street's uneven stones click beneath your sandals as you walk, still unsure whether the ache in your knee is from that last fight or just the realization that you're finally out. You pass by vendors hawking honey cakes and fried dormice, and for the first time in years, no one calls you by your fighting name. You were once the Leopard of Thrace, though you've always suspected the name came from a weird birthmark on your back, not any actual leopard-like skill. Now you're just you. You glance down at the wax seal in your hand, the one stamped with a laurel wreath and a cryptic Latin phrase that basically translates to "Congratulations on surviving." It's the Roman version of a gold watch and a retirement cake, except there's no cake, and the only thing gold about your retirement is the vague hope you'll one day touch it. You clutch the seal tighter as you approach the forum. Somewhere in that maze of statues, scroll pushers, and sandal-clad administrators is the man with the official scroll, your libellus misses, your retirement paper. Without it, you're just a tired guy loitering with abs. With it, you're a man free from contract, from the arena, from the unpredictable whims of Rome's blood-soaked entertainment industry. The queue at the retirement office. Yes, Rome had one, or something close enough, is longer than the line for fresh figs in July. Most of the people here are injured bored, or suspiciously wearing too much armor for casual day wear. You nod to a fellow retiree who has a parrot on his shoulder. The parrot screams, "Maximus," every few minutes. You assume it's either his name or the last word his opponent ever said. Eventually, you make it to the front, where a scribe with ink-stained fingers barely looks up before grumbling, "Name, arena, weapon, specialization." You mumble your answers while he scratches notes onto papyrus, pausing only to yawn dramatically. When he asks if you'd like your retirement publicly announced, you decline. The last time a retirement announcement was made in the forum, the crowd misheard and thought the man was going back into the arena. He was mobbed by fans asking him to autograph fruit, Finally, he hands you a scroll bound in faded red ribbon. It's crinkled, like it's been rolled and unrolled too many times, and you wonder if this was originally meant for someone else. Maybe it was. You tuck it under your arm and walk out before he changes his mind and drafts you into some weird political arena spin-off. And now tradition demands a ceremony. Well, not an actual official one, but something dramatic, because Rome never passed up a chance to be extra. You head toward the temple of Bellona, goddess of war and headache-inducing ceremonies. Retiring gladiators were sometimes expected to offer thanks or bribes really to gods who'd supposedly watched over them. You leave a coin, a lock of your own hair, and a tiny wooden sword you carved while recovering from a spear wound 2 summers ago. It has your initials on the hilt, which in retrospect makes it look like a kindergarten project gone rogue. As you place the offering near a faded statue of Bellona, someone scribbled a mustache on her with charcoal, which somehow feels very Roman. A priest steps up. He's bald-bored and vaguely smells like vinegar. He mumbles a few Latin phrases, sprinkles some dust on your sandals, and then tells you to go in peace, unless peace gets boring. Classic Rome. You leave the temple feeling official, like your time in the arena has been rubber-stamped and archived. You're free now. You could go anywhere, do anything, except you can't stop thinking about the next tradition, the wooden sword, the rudis. This tiny, humble piece of polished wood is what every retired gladiator dreams of, not because it's fancy, but because it's symbolic. Receiving the rudis is like getting your diploma, if your school involved near-death experiences and occasional lions. You're supposed to receive it during your final fight when the editor raises his hand in approval and a young attendant runs out holding it aloft like it's Excalibur. Except in your case, the attendant tripped and face-planted into a pile of rose petals, and the editor was too busy chatting with a flute player to notice. So now you're stuck doing what many overlooked gladiators did, buying your own rudis from a back alley souvenir stand. You find one near the Circus Maximus, sandwiched between a guy selling painted pebbles and a woman yelling at pigeons. The vendor offers you a rudis made of real, genuine, not at all fake olive wood. You inspect it. It's fine. A little uneven. Smells like fish oil. But it's yours. You pay with a few tarnished coins and tuck it into your belt. It bumps against your hip as you walk a quiet knock-knock from the past, reminding you of everything you've survived and everything you now have to figure out. Because here's the thing, no one tells you about gladiator retirement. Rome loves a fighter, but it has absolutely no clue what to do with a former one. There's no handbook, no support group, no Gladiators Anonymous. It's just you, a city full of statues, and a sword you're not supposed to use anymore. You pause near a fountain shaped like a dolphin. A child runs up to you, points at your rudis, and asks, "Is that a magic wand?" You grin, only if you believe hard enough. The child gasps in awe and runs off, presumably to turn a goat into a senator. You chuckle and sit on the edge of the fountain, dipping your fingers into the water. The city buzzes around you. Somewhere drums are beating. Probably a parade. Probably not for you. But that's okay. You lean back, close your eyes, and let the sun warm your face. You're retired now, which in Rome means the real challenge is just beginning. Retirement. That magical word that once conjured visions of vineyard strolls and long naps is in practice a little more unpredictable. You've got your rudas now, your official symbol of freedom. But as you walk through the forum with it tucked in your belt, it feels less like a reward and more like a prank gift from the gods. You don't even get a sheath, just a glorified stick that says, "Congratulations, you're done. Now go figure out life with zero savings and permanent knee damage." Rome doesn't exactly roll out the red carpet for ex-gladiators. There's no chariot parade, no commemorative mural, not even a basket of congratulatory olives. You quickly learn that retirement, at least for someone who spent the last decade dodging javelins, is more of a suggestion than a status. You wander into the Subura, the slightly less glamorous, slightly more urine-scented district where cheap wine flows and gossip travels faster than a startled goose. Everyone here recognizes you, not by your name, of course, but by your limp, your build, and your deeply suspicious tan lines. A few nod. One man even bows and says, "You were my third favorite gladiator," which is both a compliment and a mystery. Eventually, you land at a tavern, the kind with wobbly stools, watered-down wine, and a bartender who's definitely seen some things. You order something red and questionably fermented. It tastes like disappointment and raisins. Perfect. The conversation around you swirls merchants complaining about taxes, poets whining about reviews, and one guy who insists he saw a senator kiss a donkey. You sip your drink and try to feel normal. But normal is tricky when your old normal involved morning sword play and the possibility of death by trident. Then comes the awkward part. Someone recognizes the rudas. "Oh ho! Look at this guy," a large sunburnt man bellows, stumbling toward you with the grace of a drunk ostrich. "Got yourself the stick, eh?" Big shot now. You nod politely and hope that's the end of it. It is not. He launches into a rant about his cousin's friend's neighbor who was supposed to get a rudis but lost a foot instead, and how the games these days are all style no substance, and how you probably never even fought a real rhino. You did in fact fight a real rhino. His name was Tibullus. You still dream about him charging at you in slow motion with those tiny angry eyes. But you don't say any of that. You just smile and take another sip. Eventually, the man stumbles away, mumbling something about turnips. You sigh. This is the part no one prepared you for. The after. You survived the arena, outlasted the contracts, endured the rituals, got the scroll, bought the rudas. And now, you're just another face in a city that loves the spectacle but forgets the cast. Some ex-gladiators tried to live off their fame. They'd stand on corners retelling fight stories for coins or pose dramatically near temples, hoping someone might paint them. Others opened taverns or tried their hand at street theater, usually playing themselves because, ironically, no one could act more convincingly than someone who actually used to be impaled for a living. You tried the performance thing once. Someone asked you to reenact the lion leap of Lucius. You tripped over your own sandal and landed face first in a plate of goat cheese. The crowd thought it was part of the act and tossed coins. You made enough for lunch, so technically, it was a success. But you're not ready to become a walking anecdote, not yet. That's when an old friend appears, or rather, an old opponent. You spot him across the square, leaning against a statue of Mercury, his rudies hanging casually at his side. His name is Pavo, and he once dislocated your shoulder with a wooden mallet shaped like a fish. It was a weird day. He grins when he sees you. So he says, clapping your back hard enough to jostle your spine, you finally got out. I thought you were going to die dramatically, like you always promised. Thought about it, you reply. But then I remembered I still owed someone money. He laughs, deep and full. Welcome to the next act. You walk with him through the alleyways, ducking past laundry lines and goats with attitude. Pavo tells you about his first few months after retiring, how he tried opening a bakery but kept slicing the dough like it was enemy flesh. Turns out, he says you can't knead bread like it insulted your mother. Eventually, you arrive at a courtyard behind a nondescript bathhouse. To your surprise, it's full of retired gladiators, some stretching, some training, one aggressively feeding pigeons. It's not exactly a school, but it's something. This, Pavo says, gesturing around, is what we do now. It's informal, it's messy, but it's theirs. They mentor younger fighters, test new weapons, and complain loudly about back pain. One man's job is apparently just to yell motivational insults at rookies. You watch for a moment as he shouts, "That stance is more disappointing than a lukewarm fig." There's laughter. There's camaraderie. It's not the arena, but it's not bad. You sit on a bench beneath a fig tree, Rudy's in hand, and feel for the first time in a while almost at ease. The road ahead is still uncertain. You've got no formal training for any other profession. Your resume just says good at not dying. But maybe that's enough. For now, you glance at the sky already streaked with sunset. The pigeons coo softly overhead, and somewhere nearby, a street performer starts playing a tune on a badly tuned flute. It sounds like a goat sneezing, but it's oddly comforting. You lean back, let the day settle on your skin. You're not fighting anymore. You're not performing. You're just being. And that in Rome might be the most revolutionary thing you've done yet. You wake up the next morning to the sound of chickens arguing, loudly. One of them has perched on your sandal. The retired gladiator courtyard does not, it turns out, come with private chambers or silken pillows. It comes with creaky benches, communal soup, and a goat named Emperor Fluffius, who will absolutely eat your tunic if you look away for too long. You stretch your arms and hear at least 3 new joints crack. Ah, the melody of a warrior in his 30s, pretending he's still in his 20s. There's a bowl of something steaming by your feet, lentils maybe, or a brave attempt at porridge. Either way, you eat it with the appetite of someone who's used to being fed by arena staff with all the compassion of a bored torturer. Today's your first full day as a retired man, which you quickly learn does not mean rested. No, it means that you're now expected to show up at banquets, parties, and awkward funerals invited not as a guest, but as entertainment. Apparently, ex-gladiators are Rome's version of novelty acts. People want you at their cousin's wedding. They want you to reenact your best fights using roasted vegetables. One woman asks if you'll accidentally flip her ex-husband into a fountain during a birthday toast. You agree? Obviously. But the strangest, most unavoidable gig reenactment dinners. You've heard the rumors before, lavish Roman feasts full of stuffed dates, live music, and senators in various stages of unbuttoned regret. Now you're at one. You're dressed in your old armor, still dented, still smelling faintly of fear, and you're told to do a little scene between the peacock course and the flamingo tongues. You take the stage, which is a raised platform between 2 columns just big enough to avoid stepping on someone's foot. A small man in a hat announces your name with a flourish as if he's Introducing a magician. You're expected to fight against a fellow retiree also pulled in for the evening. You nod to each other. You both know the deal: go big, go slow, and don't knock out any senators unless they specifically request it. The crowd watches, vaguely entertained, like people watching two old dogs play tug-of-war with a sock. You trade fake blows, toss in a dramatic tumble, and pretend to trip over a golden platter. Someone claps. Someone else drops a fig in surprise. Then, just as you're about to deliver the final flourish, a slow-motion swing followed by a triumphant pose, your back spasms. You freeze. A moment of silence, then laughter, then applause. Apparently, they think it was part of the act. You take a bow and hobble off stage like a creaky marionette. Someone hands you a coin purse filled with clinking sounds and suspiciously sticky denarii. You're paid in half money, half mystery dessert. Back at the courtyard that evening, you compare injuries with another performer. He dislocated a toe while mock stabbing a cabbage. You toast with him using watery wine and a shared loaf of bread that crumbles into philosophical metaphors when handled too quickly. This is retirement, he says, pointing to his bruised elbow and his enormous undeserved grin. Softer edges, slightly less blood, slightly. You nod. It's strange trading real combat for staged pantomimes. But there's something comforting in it. You're no longer gambling with your life, just your pride. And let's be honest, that's been gone since the time you got knocked down by a camel. Still, as the moon rises, you can't help but feel a tug. You miss the crowd, not the danger, not the wounds, not the possibility of being skewered on a bronze spike while someone in the stands cheers with a chicken leg. But the noise, the affirmation, the weird primal connection with an audience who didn't care about your name or your past, only the thrill of watching you survive. Now you perform for a different kind of audience, the bored, the stuffed, the slightly tipsy. And while they don't scream your name in bloodlust anymore, they do sometimes request autographs on their bread rolls. You lie down under the stars, Root is by your side, and stare at the sky. A shooting star zips across the horizon. You make a wish, but you're not sure what for. Glory, peace, or maybe just a mattress with slightly fewer splinters. The night grows cooler. Someone nearby is humming an old arena chant, soft and slow. It drifts over the courtyard like incense wrapping around you like a faded cloak. This isn't what you pictured when you dreamed of surviving the arena. But it's something, and somehow that's enough for now. Morning light creeps over the rooftops like a thief trying not to wake the city. You open your eyes to the sound of wooden swords clacking, young gladiators in training grunting as they spar, full of hope muscle and zero clue what's coming. You sit up slowly, brushing fig leaves off your back, and wince. You must have slept on your rudies. Again. That's the third time this week, and at this point, it probably qualifies as emotional support furniture. Today, you're not heading to the market or another reenactment dinner. Today, you're doing what many ex-gladiators eventually try, starting your own Ludus, a gladiator training school. Which, in theory, sounds simple. You've got the skills, you've got the scars, you've got the charisma of a man who once yelled for honor while being chased by a flaming elephant. But Rome is a city built on paperwork, nepotism, and olive oil. Opening a ludus means navigating a maze of permits, property disputes, and bureaucrats who can barely spell gladius. And worst of all, you have to name the school. You try something intimidating, Domus Mortis House of Death. The local magistrate rejects it instantly. Too aggressive, he says, while adjusting his decorative owl hat. You try again, Ludus Invictus, the unconquered school. Still no. Apparently there's already a chain of bathhouses with that name, and they're very litigious. In the end, you settle on Ludus Aurelius, which means nothing in particular, but sounds classy and vaguely senatorial. Now comes the hard part, students. At first, you attract the usual suspects. Eager youths with dreams of glory, overconfident street fighters, and one man who claims to have punched a lion. You watch him punch a loaf of bread. The bread wins. You line them up in the dusty yard, pacing back and forth, with your rudies tucked behind your back like a philosopher of violence. You tell them the truth that glory is fleeting, scars are forever, and smelling like blood isn't as romantic as it sounds. One of them faints. Two others ask where the snacks are. Training begins. They're terrible. One swings a sword like he's swatting bees. Another insists on giving dramatic monologues before every swing. One boy cries because the training sandals gave him blisters. You give him a leaf and tell him it's a Band-Aid. He believes you. Confidence is key. Still, there's potential. They move with the same awkward intensity you once had back when your biggest fear was tripping in front of a senator's daughter. But being a teacher is different. You can't just shout, "Don't die," and hope for the best. You have to correct footwork, fix stances, and explain over and over that more spinning is not a valid combat strategy. By week 2, someone breaks a barrel, someone else sets fire to a tunic, and one student accidentally challenges a tax collector to single combat. You settle disputes with the calm authority of someone who once fought 3 men and a boar on a teetering platform covered in butter. Nothing phases you anymore, except maybe the pigeon that keeps nesting in your helmet. You've named it victory. It's unclear who won. Eventually, something clicks. The students start moving with purpose. They stop giggling when they parry. They complain slightly less. One even manages a proper lunge without poking his own foot. You gather them at dusk beneath the orange haze of a Roman sunset and give the speech every gladiator instructor eventually delivers. You may never fight in the arena, you say. You may never be famous. But if you learn controlled discipline and how not to fall on your own sword, you'll walk away better men, or at least less flammable. They applaud, not loudly, but genuinely. One even bows. It's touching in a way that makes you feel older than the forum itself. But Rome isn't done messing with you yet. That night, as you're closing up the ludus, a man in fine robes arrives. He's tall, smug, and flanked by 2 silent guards with arms like overcooked hams. He introduces himself as Marcellus Lento, owner of a rival gladiator school. His tunic probably costs more than your entire courtyard. Word is, he says, inspecting your training swords like they're wet socks, you've been luring students away from my ludus. You raise an eyebrow. If your students are leaving for my goat-scented dirt patch, maybe that says more about your training than mine. He doesn't laugh. He does, however, promise to make things difficult. Rome doesn't need another washed-up fighter pretending to be a mentor, he says with a sneer. Stick to parties or street performances. Leave the real training to professionals. You smile politely. You mean the kind of professionals who teach students to trip over their own capes. He leaves in a huff. You stand there for a moment watching the shadows stretch across your modest ludus. You've got no powerful sponsors, no marble columns. Just your Rudies, a few determined students, and a goat with boundary issues. But you've also got something else. Experience. And if there's one thing Rome respects eventually, it's someone who survived. So you turn off the torches, lock the gate, and head to bed. Your bones ache. Your sandals are full of pebbles. And your future is as uncertain as the next street corner. But your ludus is open, and that's a start. You wake to shouting. Not the battle kind, no clashing swords or crowd roars, but the annoying bureaucratic kind. 2 city clerks in matching tunics are arguing just outside your ludus, one holding a wax tablet, the other wildly gesturing with a half-eaten pear. Retired gladiators are exempt, one insists, as if the pear gives him legal authority. No, the other counters only certified retirees who filed the correct scroll under subsection 6 of the Freedman Relief Edict. You sigh. You haven't even had your watered wine yet. Turns out there's been a new tax on publicly retired fighters, which is ironic since you were barely allowed to retire in private. Apparently, the Senate needs coin to fix the chariot lanes again after a particularly dramatic wedding parade went off course. You try to explain that you own a school now. You show them your Rudies. You show them your scroll. You even show them Victory the pigeon, who flaps menacingly as if summoned for court testimony. But they don't care. No pension, no exemption, the pear-eating one says with a shrug. Unless, of course, you have patrons. Ah, yes, patrons. The Roman solution to everything. You've heard the whispers. Some retired gladiators strike gold by finding wealthy sponsors, usually bored senators or eccentric widows who love collecting ex-fighters like houseplants. You've avoided that life so far. Too many strings, too many requests involving shirtless dinner service and confusing poetry readings. But this new tax, it changes things. You head to the Forum Baths because if there's one place rich people like to mingle while being scrubbed by strangers, it's here. The air is thick with lavender steam and awkward small talk. You awkwardly slide into a heated pool beside a heavily perfumed man with more rings than fingers. Retired, he asks, eyeing your scars like a merchant inspecting figs. You nod. Impressive. What's your act? Now, teaching, storytelling, pretending to be a statue near temples. I run a ludus, you reply. I train new fighters. He brightens. I collect those. You pause. People. No stories. He says, though his tone makes you wonder, I could sponsor your school. Of course, I'd need a few favors. You raise an eyebrow. Perhaps attend my next party. He continues swirling his wine. Do a demonstration. Recite a poem. Maybe wear something strappy. You sigh. This is what it means to make it in retirement, swapping combat scars for pageantry blood, for bathhouse negotiations. You don't commit to anything, but you smile politely. He hands you a coin pouch that jingles with potential. You accept it like it's poison with a citrus garnish. Back at your school, the students are arguing about whether flaming sword tricks count as real training. You let them debate it out. Fire tends to teach its own lessons. You sit by the courtyard wall, thumbing through the coin pouch. It's enough to pay the new tax. Just barely. But it comes with an invitation, one of those big wax-sealed scrolls that smells like incense and dramatic expectations. A party. The kind with musicians, exotic birds, and someone inevitably falling into a fountain. You go, of course, because you need the patronage. Because your school needs roof repairs. Because Victory has started pecking through the grain sack. The party is extravagant. Peacocks with tiny helmets, a man juggling eels, a fountain full of mulled wine. You're introduced to everyone as the man who survived 39 fights and a parrot incident. Your patron insists you do something memorable, so you fight lightly. A choreographed duel with another retiree who also owes this man a favor. You use wooden swords and dramatic pauses. It's a performance, not a battle, but the crowd doesn't care. They cheer, they drink, someone throws grapes. Later, your patron corners you and says, "That was delightful. You made bloodlessness look fashionable." You're handed another pouch of coins. This one's heavier. He wants you at his next event. And the next, just like that, you become an entertainer again, but with better shoes. You walk home through moonlit alleys, the rudies thumping softly against your hip, and you wonder, is this freedom or just a different arena? Because, let's be honest, Rome never really lets anyone go. It just changes costumes. Still, you reach your ludus, see your students practicing footwork in the moonlight, and feel something steady beneath the uncertainty. This is yours. The taxes are high, the expectations are weird, the work is exhausting, but you made it out alive, and somehow you're still fighting, just differently. It's late. The torches are low, the wine is gone, and you're seriously considering making a pillow out of your shin guards. Again, you lie there staring up at the Roman night sky when you hear it laughter. Not the polite kind you get at dinner parties, but real belly-deep sand-in-your-teeth laughter. You follow the sound across the dim courtyard past the pigeon coop. Victory has claimed a second helmet and through a crumbling gate half covered in ivy. And they are tucked between two forgotten bathhouses and a fig orchard that smells vaguely of regret, you find it. A village, not on any map, not in any forum record, just a quiet patch of Rome where ex-gladiators go when they've finally had enough of everything fighting, performing, pretending to be human war trophies. A place that smells like old armor oil, roasted onions, and retirement in its purest form. The man who greets you is named Marius. He's bald, wide, and wearing a tunic that looks suspiciously like it used to be a tent. He gestures for you to sit beside a fire that crackles with the ease of 100 shared stories. "Welcome to Victrix Vale," he says. "It's where we go to rot with dignity." You like him immediately. The village is small, no more than 24 huts. One shrine, a soup pot the size of a chariot, and a wooden board where people post passive-aggressive complaints like, "Please stop sharpening swords at dawn," or "Who stole my goose?" You ask how long the place has existed. No one really knows. Marius says, "Poke in the fire." Some say it started with a single ex-gladiator who built a hut and refused to leave. Others say it was founded by a senator's wife who got tired of hosting fake duels in her garden. You walk around. Everywhere you see familiar eyes, retired fighters with stiff knees, faded tattoos, and stories that sound suspiciously like yours. One man is carving a chess set out of old helmet pieces. Another is teaching goats to respond to battle commands. Badly. But the most shocking thing, they're happy. Not pretending to be, not smile for the audience happy, but relieved. Like they've finally taken off the weight of who they were supposed to be. There's a shared understanding here. No one asks what your arena name was. No one wants a reenactment. They don't care if you were famous or forgettable. You survived. You made it here. That's enough. A woman named Cassia shows you her vegetable garden. She used to fight with twin daggers and once disarmed an opponent with a loaf of bread. Now she grows cucumbers shaped like thumbs. She laughs when you ask why. Because normal ones are boring, she says. You help her water the garden even though half the plants look like they're plotting rebellion. She gives you a sprig of basil and calls it a retirement medal. You wear it behind your ear because you run out of reasons not to. That night, everyone gathers around the central fire. Someone produces an instrument that's either a lyre or an extremely optimistic fish trap. Music starts, wine flows, laughter returns. They tell stories, not of battles, but of mishaps. I once tripped on my own net and head-butted a wall, one man says proudly. I fainted before the match even started, another chimes in. Got the victory by default. You realize something in Victrix Vale Glory isn't about surviving the arena. It's about surviving after it and finding joy in the ordinary. You sleep that night on a pile of soft blankets beneath an olive tree. No armor, no spectators, just wind in the leaves and someone softly snoring nearby. When you wake, the village is already alive. Chickens clucking kettles, steaming, someone shouting about an inappropriate use of sandals. Marius offers you bread. Cassia hands you a wooden cup of something herbal that may or may not be wine. You sit in the morning sun and feel still. They invite you to stay. There's a hut you can take over. It needs repairs, a roof, and preferably fewer rats. But it's yours if you want it. And you almost say yes, almost. But something tugs at you. A thought, a face. The students back at your ludus. The way they look at you like you matter, not for who you were, but for who you're helping them become. You finish your drink, thank everyone, promise to visit again. Cassia hugs you. Marius claps your shoulder. Someone hands you a pickle and says, "For the road." You return to your school by midday, walking with lighter steps and one basil leaf still stuck behind your ear. The students cheer when they see you. Not loudly, more like in that awkward please, don't notice we broke the training pole kind of way. You grin. You've seen what lies at the edge of this life-peace laughter and pickle-based hospitality. But you're not done yet. Not here. Not while there's still someone trying to master the art of falling without twisting their ankle. Not while Victory the Pigeon still claims your helmet like it's imperial property. You hang up your rudies on the school wall, and you keep going. You knew retirement would be strange. You just didn't expect it to involve this much stew. Every day is a different flavor, lentil, barley, something that might be cabbage, but also might be regret. The students cook in turns. One of them tried to impress you by adding oysters. That was a dark day. Still, there's comfort in routine. You've got your ludus, your bizarre little flock of hopefuls, and Victory the Pigeon now has her own perch made from old spear shafts. You've settled into the role of instructor, mentor, and occasional emergency dentist. Then one afternoon, while you're showing a young trainee how not to somersault into a wall, a letter arrives. It's written on scented parchment. Too scented. You unfold it, and the waft of cinnamon and desperation nearly knocks you over. It's an invitation. Again, this time not to a banquet, to a wedding. Apparently, some minor senator is marrying the daughter of a minor wine baron. A political move disguised as love seasoned with peacocks and drama. And you guessed it, they want you there. Not as a guest, as entertainment. But not the usual swordplay this time. No, they want you to serve food, in costume, while pretending to be your old gladiator persona. You read the letter twice just to confirm it actually says, "Please lunge dramatically while offering olives." You sigh deeply, the kind of sigh that echoes through your ribs and comes out sounding like an old door hinge. At first, you say no. You're done being a novelty act, but then you see the coin they're offering. Enough to buy new shields for every student, enough to fix the roof on the training hut, enough to maybe even build a second latrine. You agree, because dignity is noble, but latrines are practical. The wedding is everything you fear. Gold-leafed decorations, flute music so shrill it could peel paint, guests draped in silk, and bad decisions. You arrive in your old armor, polished to a fake shine. They hand you a tray of dates and tell you to look fierce but approachable. Whatever that means. You stalk through the crowd offering snacks with a growl and a nod. One man drops a fig in fear. Another mistakes you for a statue and tries to lean on you. A child throws a grape at your helmet. You resist the urge to throw one back. Then the bride approaches. She's young, overly perfumed, and looks like she'd rather be anywhere else. "You're the gladiator," she asks. You nod. She squints. "Did you used to fight tigers?" Once you say, she tilts her head. "Did you win?" You hesitate. Technically, the tiger ran away. She smiles. "Lucky you." You offer her a pastry shaped like a lion. She accepts it, and for a moment, you see it what Rome really is. A giant parade of masks. Everyone playing a part. Senators pretending to love the people, brides pretending to be happy, and you pretending you were only ever meant to serve honey cakes between bites. After the ceremony, they hand you your coin. You leave quietly, just as fireworks begin. You don't look back. You've seen enough. Back at the ludus, the students are waiting. You throw the coin purse onto the table. New shields, you announce. They cheer. One does a cartwheel and knocks over a water barrel. Progress. You retire to your quarters if a room with a curtain and a goat is quarters, and sit on your cot. You take off your sandals and stare at the floor where a single grape from the wedding has somehow hitched a ride. You eat it. Sour, just like you expected. Still you smile. You're not in the arena anymore. But every day you battle something bureaucracy, goats, egos, memories. And every day you win. Sort of. Even if it's only a technical win like with the tiger. And maybe that's what real retirement is, surviving long enough to choose what fights are still worth showing up for. You lie back. Victory the pigeon flutters onto your shoulder like a judgmental feathered ghost. You whisper to her, "Next wedding, I'm sending you." The next morning, you wake to banging again. Not swords, not drums, but the rhythmic thunk, thunk, thunk of someone trying to shove their helmet onto a head it clearly does not fit anymore. You step outside, and there's your tallest student, Lucius, built like a marble column brain, like a gently bruised peach, trying to wedge his head into a helmet meant for someone half his size. "Parade day," he says cheerfully through clenched teeth. "They sent for us." You squint at the sun. Parade day. Right, the one where retired gladiators are legally required, yes, legally, to march through the city in their old armor while the masses cheer and throw wilted herbs. Apparently, it was some senator's idea of honoring the heroes. Or maybe he just really liked watching old men sweat. You don't get a choice in the matter. The law's been around since Augustus, who once claimed it boosted morale. Historians still debate whether he was being sincere or just really into pageantry. So, you suit up. Your armor still technically fits, though you suspect something has gone horribly wrong with your shoulders. Everything's heavier than you remember. Or maybe you've just gotten used to not being a human bronze casserole. The students help you buckle your greaves. One of them sneaks a fig into your helmet. You find it 2 hours later and eat it out of spite. At the gathering point, you find dozens of other retired fighters. Some are broad-shouldered and regal, others look like they've been dug up for the occasion. You nod at a few familiar faces, Cassia from the Garden, Marius from Victrix Vale, and that one guy who insists he once fought a ghost. Nobody corrects him. Rome has stranger things. The crowd begins to gather. Children squeal. Older women shout compliments. And at least 3 people loudly ask, "Is that him?" You know the one with the goat. It's unclear whether they mean you. The parade begins. Trumpets blare. Banners flap. The scent of roasted chestnuts mingles with sweat leather polish and mild public anxiety. You march down the Via Sacra, trying not to trip over cobblestones while maintaining a dignified scowl. Every so often, someone steps forward to press a garland into your hand. You accept them with the poise of someone who once performed mock executions between cheese platters. You see a child holding a wooden sword, waving it wildly. His mother beams. "He wants to be like you," she says. You smile. You don't have the heart to tell her the kid should probably consider accounting. Around the Temple of Saturn, the parade slows. You're ushered onto a temporary stage with several other retirees. One is loudly eating grapes. Another appears to be asleep. A senator draped in gold-trimmed robes and the smugness of a man who's never seen battle takes the platform. He launches into a long speech about valor duty and the glorious tradition of Rome's noble fighters. He pronounces gladiator like it rhymes with potato. You shift uncomfortably as he praises things he clearly doesn't understand. Then, to your horror, he points at you. You there, the leopard of Thrace. You wince. That name again. Tell the people what it means to retire a hero. You stare out at the crowd, at the boys holding toy swords, at the women clutching fresh bread, at the drunk man riding a donkey backwards. You clear your throat. It means waking up with more bruises than memories, you say. It means learning to walk without looking over your shoulder. It means realizing that surviving is a skill, not just a fluke. And it means you glance at your students standing off to the side. It means teaching the next generation how not to get skewered by someone who forgot to bathe. A beat of silence, then applause. Even the senator claps, though he looks slightly offended about the bathing comment. You descend from the stage, your armor groaning in protest. The parade ends at the Field of Mars, where wine flows freely and someone plays a tune on panpipes while wearing a pig mask. Rome. You sit beneath an olive tree, loosen your greaves, and let the breeze wash over you. A little girl walks up and places a flower on your helmet. "For the tiger," she says solemnly. You blink. "How do you know about the tiger?" She shrugs. "My uncle says you fought it in sandals." "You didn't. You wore boots." But you nod anyway. As the crowd begins to disperse, a few other retirees gather around you. They're tired, aching, but laughing. One tells a story about a duel where both fighters accidentally ran the wrong way and tripped over the ceremonial goat. You laughed so hard you nearly pulled something. You remember the law now. The old rule that said once a year, all retired gladiators must walk the streets to remind Rome what it cost to keep the people entertained. It's strange. You thought it would feel like a performance, but it feels like something else, like testimony, like memory made public. You may not be in the arena anymore, but your steps still echo in its shadow. And sometimes, just sometimes, people remember. 2 days after the parade, just as your knees start to forgive you for existing, a man shows up at your ludus with a letter and a lopsided mustache. "You're being summoned," he says flatly, handing you the scroll like it contains a recipe for doom. It's sealed with red wax and the crest of the city magistrate, which is never a sign that cookies are coming. You open it squinting as if that'll make the Latin less aggressive. The message is blunt. The city of Rome formally requests your assistance in the apprehension of fugitives and dangerous beasts. You're not sure if you've been recruited or gently blackmailed. Before you can protest, the mustached man adds, "It's standard. They do this to all the retired ones." "All the retired, what you ask?" He shrugs. "The scary ones." Apparently, Rome has a policy, unofficial of course, where ex-gladiators are occasionally invited to assist in tasks too risky for the regular guards. Dangerous jobs, messy jobs, the kind where people either get bitten or bribed. You try to argue that you're running a school now, that you've got responsibilities, that your spine clicks every time you bend over. But he just grins. You're still faster than the average goat thief. You know this is technically true. So that's how you find yourself pressed into one of the strangest post-retirement gigs Rome has ever invented: bounty work. It starts small. A missing merchant who ran off with someone's dowry. You track him to a tavern where he's passed out in a soup bowl. You drag him out by the collar while the barmaid cheers you on with a half-eaten cucumber. Next, a wild boar that's been terrorizing the senator's garden. You manage to lure it with overripe peaches and a song you barely remember from your ludus days. The senator thanks you by giving you a marble statue of you. It's weirdly flattering and weirdly inaccurate. You're not that tall. Then the strange case of the escaped mime. Yes, a mime. He was arrested for impersonating a magistrate. Badly. He's surprisingly fast. It takes 3 rooftops and a fruit cart collision before you finally pin him down using an empty wine amphora and sheer embarrassment. Each mission is more ridiculous than the last. A runaway debtor hiding in an amphitheater pretending to be a statue. A pet leopard loose in a bathhouse. A pair of drunk nobles dueling with breadsticks while riding donkeys. It's chaos. And weirdly, fun. You don't expect that. You don't expect the way it feels stepping back into action, but on your terms. No sand, no crowds. Just instinct training and the faint thrill of being useful again. Your students love it. They hang on every word when you return each night. Did you catch him? Was there a fire? Did you do the flying knee thing? You try to downplay it, but let's be honest. You did do the flying knee thing once, and then immediately iced your hip for 2 days. But it's not all comedy. There are moments, quiet ones, that remind you why this isn't just theater. Like when you catch a thief who turns out to be a starving boy. You hand him over to the guards, but not before slipping a coin into his pocket and telling him, "This life doesn't end well. Trust me." Or when you help a former gladiator, now blind, find his way back to Victrix Vale. You walk beside him for hours, sharing stories, neither of you needing to pretend you're whole anymore. Rome, you realize, is full of broken things, but some of them still work, just differently. One evening, you return from a particularly absurd assignment involving a merchant, 3 angry ducks, and a misunderstanding about sausages. You collapse onto your cot armor, creaking like an old ship. Cassia arrives not long after. She tosses you a sack of roasted chestnuts and says, "Heard you chased a mime through a fountain." "Don't ask," you mutter. She sits beside you, silent for a moment. Then, "You like it, don't you?" You nod. It's not the arena, but it's still something. "Just don't forget what you've already won," she says. You don't need to prove anything anymore. You look at her. You think about that. She's right. And yet, part of you still burns a little every time the wind hits just right and you catch the smell of iron and adrenaline. You're not trying to relive the old glory. You're just trying to matter. Maybe that's all any retired gladiator really wants. Not more blood, just a place in the story. There's a rumor that drifts through the back alleys of Rome like incense smoke somewhere beyond the edge of the Aventine Hill, hidden among weeds and whispers. There's a shrine built by ex-gladiators, no signs, no maps, just a crooked path marked by broken bits of armor and stories no one wrote down. You hear about it while breaking up a tavern brawl between 2 retired charioteers arguing about wheel sizes. One of them, bleeding slightly from the ego, mutters, "You should visit the shrine. Might help you sleep again." You don't respond. But that night, you don't sleep. The words coil around your thoughts like a net. A shrine, built by people like you, not for victory, not for vanity, for memory. So one morning, with your rudies strapped to your back, and Victory the pigeon perched on your shoulder like a slightly judgmental scout, you follow the rumors. You pass the usual landmarks, the graffiti-covered wine fountain, the archway where someone sells questionable figs, and the crossroads where people claim the ghost of a retired butcher still critiques passers-by. Then the path changes. No more cobblestones, just dirt and silence, the kind of silence that makes your ears buzz. You find yourself walking through a grove of cypress trees, their branches whispering secrets you can't quite catch. And then you see it. The shrine. It's smaller than you imagined, built from cracked marble, discarded helmets, broken swords and shields, too dented for further use. No statues, no flames, just presence. There are offerings tucked between the stones, bits of bread, old coins, a small doll with a tiny wooden sword. Someone's left a sandal with a name carved into the sole. Another has tied a crimson sash to a spear haft. You stand there not sure what you're supposed to feel. Then you realize you're not supposed to do anything. You're supposed to remember. This is where they came. The forgotten ones. The ones who didn't get statues or parade mentions or absurd wedding invitations. The ones who quietly laid down their weapons and faded into fields, alleys, and smoke. You kneel. You place your rudis beside the pile, not to leave it, but to let it rest. Just for a while. Victory flaps her wings once and settles down on a shield that's cracked through the middle like a broken moon. You whisper a name, not yours, someone else's. One of the first you trained with, the one who didn't make it past his 3rd fight. You haven't said his name in years. It feels right here. You don't cry because your body doesn't remember how to anymore, but something inside you loosens like a bandage finally fallen away. You spend the morning there, watching the light shift over the stones, watching the ants carry crumbs across the hilts of forgotten blades. Then you spot a small boy, maybe 10, watching you from the trees. He steps forward timidly, clutching something in both hands. It's a toy sword, roughly carved, uneven, splintery, but real in its own way. My father fought, he says. They say he died in the arena. But I think maybe he came here instead. You nod gently, take the toy, and place it among the offerings. The boy doesn't say anything else. He just watches. Then after a long moment, he turns and walks back into the woods. You stay a little longer. And when you finally rise, you carry your rudies again, but now it feels different. Not heavier, not lighter, just understood. Back in the city, the chaos returns. Students yelling, chickens escaping. Someone's thrown a helmet on top of the latrine as a prank. Rome is still Rome, but you carry something new with you now. A quietness, a reverence. You start telling stories during training, not just about techniques or strategy, but about people. Fighters who mattered, who taught you things you didn't understand until years later. You see it in your students' eyes, the recognition that the arena was never just about blood. It was about connection, about endurance, about becoming something more than entertainment. That night, you hang a small token from the shrine above the Ludus gate, a faded ribbon, tied in a simple knot. You don't tell anyone what it means. You don't have to. They understand. There's an unspoken rule among retired gladiators: you don't fight again. Not in the arena, not in the alleys, not for show, not even for coin. It's one of the few sacred lines Rome still pretends to honor. Once you've been given the rudies, the symbolic wooden sword of retirement, you're supposed to be done. But Rome doesn't like letting go. Not of its bread, not of its circuses, and especially not of its champions. It starts as many foolish ideas do with a senator. He shows up one afternoon during sparring drills carried in a litter so decadent it looks like it was designed by someone allergic to humility. His tunic is brighter than the sun and shorter than his attention span. He doesn't introduce himself, he just watches, and then he claps. "Impressive," he says, stepping down onto your dusty training yard like he's about to claim it in the name of fashion. "I have a proposition." You wipe sweat from your brow and wait. You already know you're going to hate it. He grins. A private event, exclusive, discreet, one last match. You versus another legend. You start walking away before he finishes. But he follows. Of course he does. "There's gold," he says quickly, "enough to replace all your gear. Build a real roof, hire more instructors, maybe even buy that vineyard you always pretend not to want." You stop because he's right. Not about the vineyard you'd kill every grape in under a week, but about the money. The Ludus is holding together with rope hope and the terrifying determination of Cassia's soup. And lately, even the pigeons are starting to migrate away from your leaky roof. Still, you turn back and say the only thing that matters: "I'm retired." He nods as if expecting that. I know. That's what makes it so exciting. 2 retired warriors. 1 night only. No death. Just performance. Symbolic. Glorious. You stare at him. Symbolic, he says. But Rome doesn't do symbolic very well. Rome does spectacle. He leaves you with a scroll. No signature, just a wax seal shaped like a lion swallowing a coin. You don't open it. You don't need to. You already know what it says. That night, you can't sleep. Not because you're afraid, but because you want to. And that scares you more than anything. You remember the silence before a match, the breath before the first strike, the pulse that tells you this is who you are. But you're not that anymore. Are you? The next morning, Cassia finds you staring at the scroll. I heard she says, because of course she did. Going to do it. I don't know. She shrugs. If you do wear clean boots, if you don't teach Tullius how to fall properly before he dislocates his optimism, you chuckle. But the scroll stays unopened. Days pass. You try to focus on the ludus, on your students, on fixing the roof, on training, on normalcy. But the thought lingers. What if, one evening, while you're practicing alone just a few moves, a few forms, you notice someone watching. It's Lucius, the tall one with too many muscles and not enough coordination. You're faster than I thought, he says. You nod. I'm also older than you think. He walks up hesitant. If you do fight, can I watch? You hesitate. And that's when it hits you. This isn't about the match. It's about the story. One last story, one last lesson. Not in blood, not in pain, but in how to finish. So, you open the scroll, and you say yes on your terms. The match is held outside the city in a private villa, built on stolen stone and wine-soaked pride. No crowd. Just a few nobles, a handful of masked observers, and far too much perfume in the air. Your opponent is someone you haven't seen in years. Titus, the hammer of Carthage. He smiles when he sees you. A little crooked, a little broken, like someone who's carried too many memories and not enough peace. No death, he says. Just a dance. You nod, and then it begins. Wooden swords, measured strikes, breath, movement, memory. You flow like you used to. Not perfectly, but with purpose. Your bodies speak in an old language no one else understands. Each swing a sentence, each dodge a phrase, each glance a shared understanding that you've earned this moment. And then together you stop. You both bow. The nobles applaud politely, already distracted by a flaming dessert platter. But you don't care, because for the first time in a long while, you feel whole. Not as a fighter, as a man. You walk away from the villa with coin in your pouch, sweat on your brow, and peace in your bones. And when you return to the ludus, your students swarm you. How was it? Did you win? Did you punch him? You laugh. We both did. And that night, you hang your rudies just a little higher on the wall. Not because you broke the rule, but because you rewrote it. You've noticed something. Lately at dusk, your students gather a little closer when you speak. They hang on your words, not just for sword technique or war stories, but for the strange comfort that comes from someone who's seen it all and is still here to talk about it. You didn't plan on becoming a storyteller. You weren't trained to weave tales over stew or to answer whispered questions about fear and fate while sharpening sticks. But somehow, you've become that figure, the one people turn to when the shadows stretch long and the world feels too heavy. And so, you start to tell them the stories you used to keep hidden. The other stories. The ones whispered around fires by men too proud to admit they were scared. The stories of haunted helmets, cursed sand pits, and the ghosts of old rivals who never quite left the arena. The students laugh nervously at first, Then they lean in closer. You tell them about the helmet that supposedly echoed its last wearer's dying breath, how every Saturnalia someone would hear it whisper their name from a storage room no one liked to clean. You tell them about the time your fellow fighter, Marcus the Silent, refused to fight a match because he claimed his opponent was already dead. That opponent did in fact fall mid-match, without a single strike landing. You tell them about the sand. Oh, the sand. How some nights it clung to your feet like fingers. How once, after a brutal match, you swore it pulsed beneath you, like something beneath the arena was alive or waiting. Historians still debate, you say, with a wry smile, whether the Colosseum was built atop an ancient battlefield or something older. They ask, if you believe in ghosts, you shrug. I believe in what I've seen. And I've seen men scream at shadows they swore were real. Sometimes, when the students are quiet, you see it in their eyes. That fear, that question. Will I make it through this life? So you tell one more story. The story of a duel that wasn't in the arena. A duel no one ever cheered for. No sponsors. No banners. It happened years ago in a side alley near the Forum, long after both fighters had hung up their weapons. One bumped into the other. A grudge was reawakened. Pride sparked like flint. You were there. You tried to stop it. But you didn't get there in time. The fight was short, ugly, and silent. Both men struck true. Both fell. And when the crowd gathered, no one recognized them. Just two old men in dusty cloaks bleeding into a cracked marble road. You say there's no glory in a final fight no one sees. The students go quiet. One of them, a girl named Marcia, who insists on fighting with the staff twice. Her height asks, so why do we train? You smile. To not fight. To be strong enough not to prove anything. That night, you light a small fire in the yard, not for warmth, for memory. You place a few old relics beside it, a cracked gauntlet, a tooth from your first match. You kept it in a pouch all these years. A broken training sword once swung by a boy who never made it past his second match. The students gather around. No cheers, no announcements. Just silence. You whisper, these were the quiet ones, the ones who mattered even if no one remembered. Then you tell them the story of Cassius the Calm, who once defeated 3 opponents by never swinging at all. He waited, dodged, disarmed, until they gave up from exhaustion and humiliation. You never forgot that match, not because it was bloody, because it wasn't. They ask, what happened to him? You pause, then say he became a librarian. They laugh. You chuckle too. But in your mind, you picture him still alive somewhere, telling his own stories among scrolls instead of scars. Later that evening, Cassia finds you watching the fire. You're getting sentimental, she says, handing you a mug of something sweet and probably fermented. You raise your eyebrows. I prefer hauntingly wise, she snorts. You've become their legend. You shake your head. No, I just survived long enough to be confused for one. She sits beside you. Together, you watch the students stargazing on the training field. They're tired, sore, covered in bruises and ambition. You sip your drink and say softly, one day they'll tell stories too. Cassia nods. Let's hope theirs end better. And in the distance, a breeze kicks up, rustling the trees, swirling the firelight like a dancer spinning beneath the stars. You listen, not for ghosts, but for echoes. Because the old stories never really leave. They just wait to be told again. A letter arrives one morning, written in precise, almost obsessive script. No flourishes, no scent, just ink and silence. The seal is black wax pressed with the symbol of a broken laurel wreath. You know what it is before you open it. An old friend has died. Not in the arena, not in battle, in his sleep. A quiet end, a rare one. His name was Septimus, though you always called him Seven, because he'd won exactly 7 matches before retiring with both his ears and a healthy fear of spears. You trained with him. You bled beside him. You argued with him over soup spices, tunic length, and once very passionately, over whether sandals could be considered formal wear, if polished. He was one of the few who never looked back. After retirement, he vanished into the countryside, started a vineyard, and swore off violence forever. You thought you'd see him again. You didn't. You leave the ludus quietly, leaving Cassia in charge. The students ask where you're going. You say, to remember someone who chose peace. They don't stop you. They just watch you walk away. The funeral is in a small village nestled between hills that smell like rosemary and sunburn. His vineyard stretches wide, tangled with grapes and laughter from a life well lived. The people there don't know your name, but they know his. They speak of him like family. There's no pomp, no procession, just a circle of friends, a few honest tears, and a hand-dug grave beneath an olive tree. You kneel beside the mound, place a sprig of basil, and whisper, "You were right about sandals, not about soup." Someone chuckles nearby. It's an old woman with sharp eyes and a posture that dares time to challenge her. She introduces herself as Septimus's partner. She says he talked about you often. He said you'd outlive all of them, she says, handing you a bottle of wine he made himself. He said you'd keep telling their stories. You don't know what to say. You just nod. Later, you sit beneath the tree, sipping the wine, watching birds flit between vines. It's quiet here. Not like the city where everything's always loud, always pushing forward. You start to understand why he left, why so many do. And yet, you also know why you stayed. The next day you return to Rome. The roads feel older somehow. So do you. Your students greet you with cautious glances like they know something's shifted but can't name it. Cassie asks how it went. You hand her the bottle. He made it and drank most of it. She smiles. The next few days pass in a strange calm. You train, you teach, you repair a cracked practice dummy that someone stuffed with olive pits. You listen to Lucius recite a battle poem he wrote, which somehow rhymes blood with muddy fish stew. And then a knock. Not a guard, not a messenger. A man. Quiet, thin, nervous. He bows low. Too low. "I need your help," he says. "There's someone I must challenge. A duel. But not to the death." You blink. Why? He hesitates. Honor. Closure. And because he taught me everything I know, but he never let me win. You raise an eyebrow. So you want to fight your master. Yes, you study his face. He's not angry. He's not arrogant. He's grieving something, a version of himself perhaps. You understand that more than you care to admit. You don't agree, but you offer him something else. "Come spar with my students," you say. Stay a while. Teach if you want. And if after a week you still feel the need to fight him, really fight him, I'll help you. He agrees. Days pass. He trains. He laughs. He bleeds a little. He eats victory's breadcrumbs off the training bench, and slowly you see it. The anger dissolves. The grief softens. The need to fight becomes a need to belong. On the seventh day, he comes to you with a calm smile. "I think I've already won," he says. You nod. That's what real warriors learn. That evening, you take down a faded scrap of parchment from the wall of the ludus. It's old, cracked, barely readable. A poem, scribbled years ago. Possibly by you, possibly by someone you miss. You read it aloud. Not all blades are drawn in anger. Not all wars are loud. Some battles are fought in silence. Some victories wear no crown. The students sit quietly. Even victory seems to understand fluffing her wings just once, then settling in. You sit back, you breathe, and you realize you don't need a final fight. You've already had your last duel. It just wasn't with a sword. It was with yourself, the part of you that thought worth only came from blood and cheers. You won that battle when you stepped off the arena floor and kept walking. Rain tapped softly on the roof of your ludus like the city itself is remembering how to whisper. You're sitting by the window sipping broth that tastes vaguely of time and slightly of mystery. Outside, the students are finishing their drills, slipping occasionally on the wet stones, laughing when they fall. It's become part of the rhythm effort era learning laughter. The days feel slower now, not empty, full, but in a different way. Less about survival, more about continuity, and yet there's still something unfinished, something quiet. So one morning, you walk to the edge of the city. No armor, no rudis, just your tunic, a walking stick, and a satchel packed with nothing but bread, a worn-out sandals patch, and a scroll you never managed to send. Your feet know the way before your mind remembers it. You're heading toward an old training ground, not yours, not anymore. One that belonged to a man named Gaius. Gaius the Gray, your first real mentor. The one who saw more than your muscles, more than your rage, more than the chip on your shoulder, the size of a temple column. He taught you how to breathe, how to wait, how to lose with grace and win without noise. He also made you recite bad poems as punishment, which in hindsight was effective. He disappeared after your 5th year in the arena. Retired, you were told, vanished into the provinces. No one ever said why. You find his training field by accident or by fate. It's overgrown now, wild with grass and fig roots and silence. But there's still a line in the dirt where the sparring circle used to be. You sit at its edge, and for the first time in years, you speak aloud to no one. I kept going, you say. I didn't mean to, but I did. A breeze rustles the leaves like a nod. I trained others, told them your stories, the real ones, not the bloody ones. You reach into your satchel and pull out the scroll. You never got to send it, didn't know where or when or whether it mattered. But now you unroll it. You read it anyway, out loud. It's not a letter, it's a list. All the names of the fighters you trained. Next to each a note, still fights. Opened a bakery, became a father, writes terrible love poetry, blames me. When you finish reading, you fold the scroll and place it in the crook of a fig tree. A tribute, not to Gaius, to legacy. You return to the city slowly, the kind of slow that doesn't come from pain, but from presence. You watch the rooftops blur into twilight. You smell bread from a corner bakery. You hear someone singing off-key about a goat. And when you reach the ludus, the gate is open. The students are inside practicing footwork under torchlight. Cassia is correcting someone's grip with a ladle. Victory is asleep in the armor rack, still refusing to use the perch you made her. You smile. You enter. You live. The night grows late. Your story softens. The candle beside your cot burns lower and lower until the shadows stretch like gentle arms. You lie down, arms behind your head, eyes tracing the ceiling's cracks you still haven't fixed. You listen to the rain. Not every gladiator ends with a roar. Some fade, some whisper, and some, like you, keep echoing in other people's footsteps. Their stances, their choices, their lives. Outside the storm passes, the sky clears, and through the open window, the stars blink like old friends nodding from afar. You breathe in, slow, steady, still, and just before sleep claims you, you murmur more to yourself than anyone else. I didn't die in the arena, but I lived enough for 10 men who did. The room fades, the world softens. You drift, not into silence, but into legend. Good night.